folks. Welcome back. CPAC 2014. We are here with John O'Malley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And John, you are a former government worker. And I want to start with you by talking about the banks. Recently, we have seen a number of deaths among bankers in recent days. And everybody is looking forward and they see this doom that the banks are going to pull something on us. What's your take on that?
This is not new. This has been going on before the time of the Romans. If you read the history of the French assignat, the history of the continental dollar, governments have been debasing currencies ever since there have been currencies, because politicians always want to get something for free that they can use to buy votes. So they have been playing fast and loose with our currency. And the currency is currently being debased, and the danger is that we could face panic selling of the dollar overseas. And if and when that happens, it will be a historic event for the country, and it'll be a negative event. Many people now are paying a lot more attention to the central bank because they can see what is going on. You do not have to have a PhD in economics to understand that when they dramatically increase the currency, that sooner or later will create inflation. Now, during the crisis, 2008, some people believe that this was a pre-planned, engineered event. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of it was to put a lot of the smaller banks out of business and to give the larger banks increased market share. That is exactly what happened. Now, the Federal Reserve was done to this country in 1913. So it's over 100 years old now. Mm-hmm. So now this hypothesis gets into the issue of the controlled press, the fact that we do not have a free press, except for people like you. Mm-hmm. We have a controlled press. And many Americans, when they look at the non-reporting of the collapse of Building 7 on 9/11, they say, mm-hmm. Well, why didn't we hear about this? Why wasn't this reported? 47-story tall building not hit by a plane collapses in 7 seconds in broad daylight in the middle of Manhattan, and we never hear about it? Well, if they can control the press or control the news about something like that, they can control the news about anything. Mm-hmm. And the belief system that is increasing is the main reason to have a central bank is so you can control credit on the economy, so that you can control the economic booms and busts. And this hypothesis that a lot of people believe, although you will never hear it reported, this hypothesis is that all of these bull markets and bear markets that we have on a regular basis mm-hmm. are pre-planned and timed to the day. The incentive for that is enormous. If you are a member of the oligarchy, and if you know that this bull market or this bear market is going to start at a certain date and then it's going to end at a certain date, the profits that you can make are enormous. And what you can actually do, it's a way of confiscating wealth from the public, because there will be a portion of the public who will sell their stocks when the market's down, and then they will buy stocks when the market is up, because that's human nature. So the belief is that this oligarchy is in tune with the central bankers. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they'll gradually gathering more and more wealth onto themselves, and you reach a point where the bankers become more powerful than the nation state. One thing I think is sometimes valuable to do is to watch the TV with the sound off. So you don't hear what people are saying, you just look at their body language. And I can remember when, if you remember back in 2008, 9, whenever it was, Hank Paulson and the bankers were getting together, and Barack Obama, they were all involved in this. And they had these meetings of the big bankers and the Treasury Secretary and the President. The bankers, just looking at their body language, the bankers looked relaxed and confident. Hank Paulson looked nervous. And some of these senators looked nervous. Now, the words said that the politicians were in control and they were bossing the banks around. That's what the words said.
Right.
But if you turn the volume off and look at the body language indicates that the bankers were the boss and the politicians were indicating by their body language that they were subservient to the bankers. America is not supposed to be like that.
Well, no, but it seems as though the bankers might know something because of the recent deaths that have been coming up. So either somebody's killing them or they are committing suicide. It's being portrayed in the movie as they're committing suicide or they know something.
If you go back to the John Kennedy murder, there were a lot of untimely deaths. And a lot of them were recorded as suicides.
Okay.
But a lot of people believe that they did not appear to be suicides. So, like with Andrew Breitbart, we still don't know about him. Whenever there is a suspicious death of a prominent person that is reported as a heart attack or as a suicide, I think you have to at least consider the alternate hypothesis is that it was a murder. Because if these people were murdered, the kind of people who would do that would always want to make it look like a suicide.
Right. And you mentioned Andrew Breitbart, and that has always crossed my mind.
Yes.
Because he was only about 43, if I remember correctly. And if I remember the case, he was walking home at night, and supposedly he had a heart attack. This is from what I hear, but you don't know if he's walking home alone at night that somebody hit him or did something or whatnot.
Whenever a controversial person dies of a heart attack when they are alone, that creates suspicion because we don't know if they were alone. Using, drugs, pharmaceuticals, we have to consider the possibility that while he was walking home alone, that 2 or 3 men met him, 2 of them grabbed him, the other one injected a pharmaceutical that gave him a heart attack. Now, we cannot prove that, but the way the world is now, people are suspecting this kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot of examples that don't look right. The death of former CIA Director Colby, the DC madam, I forget her name. There's something about those demises that didn't look right. And Andrew Breitbart, now we don't know. We are speculating. It could be that he had a heart attack.
Right.
Or it could be that it was a homicide. And then when we look at people like Michael Hastings, and then you have the LAPD putting out an official story that appears to be physically impossible, the public is questioning what kind of people we have in government and who is controlling what is supposed to be our government. This is pretty
Yes,
scary. This is very scary.
It is. And this type of thing has been going on for a long time in the world, these types of killings. Well, we don't know if it's a killing, but these suspect things.
Before the Romans.
Yeah. So then let's talk about the National Security Agency, which was created, okay?
Yeah.
Now, they have, according to some, have the tendency to spy on people.
Yes.
And you've got a smile out of you for that one.
Yes.
I'm putting it to you abruptly or nicely, I don't know however we want to say it, but however they spy on you, they can use your cell phone,
Yes.
they can, you name it, they can, you know, dig up your records and find you. And so I want to get your thoughts on Edward Snowden and that whole case.
Well, more and more Americans now, when they look at or examine things like the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7, they do not believe the official story of 9/11. So that means all of these things that were done supposedly in response to 9/11 are also in question. The Patriot Act, TSA, NSA, NDAA, all of these are supposed to protect us from some kind of terrorist. Now, the idea that NSA would record every single email, every single phone conversation, every single text message, and then keep it in perpetuity, that is a country that is on the path towards some type of a Hitlerian police state. We are on the path for a Hitlerian police state. And we saw what happened in Nazi Germany, and it was not good. One thing, with modern technology, when they record these phone conversations, they can convert that into text.
Yes.
So now they have a...
you can even do that even if
Yeah.
you just own a cell phone.
Yes.
Just get Google Plus or Google Voice.
Yes.
And it
Oh,
will
yeah.
convert it into text.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the same technology that enables you to talk into a microphone and have, instead of typing with your fingers in a...
Now, supposing, okay, I have Google Voice, okay, and I've learned how to use it. But people often get angry at another, and suppose they call up a person because they're in the middle of a fight and they say, you know, I don't want you to come over my house. I don't like you anymore. And they leave a nasty cryptic message and it gets converted to text. And then the person receives it, files a complaint with the, like they're a terrorist, and bring them up on the terrorist charges.
And people can say worse things than that. Because,
Yes.
I mean, when the NSA gathers all this stuff and it's converted into text, that is now a searchable database. Now, that means whenever you do or say anything, now you have to kind of be looking over your shoulder. Is the government going to know? It means that you're afraid to say anything because you do not have free speech. The speech that you have is recorded. So it's, I mean, this is not a free country. The reason that our immigrant grandparents, great-grandparents came here is they wanted to live in a free country where the government would leave you alone. But yet the nature of people who seek government power is they always want more power. They always want to control every detail of your life, and then they have to know about every detail of your life so that they can control every detail of your life, because the kind of personality that is attracted to high-level government positions has a tendency to be psychopathic, micromanaging control freaks.
So now, what could be an innocent conversation, like the one I just mentioned,
Yeah.
the person on the receiving end, if they're angry enough, they can say, oh, we'll interpret it as a threat and
Yeah.
file a case in court.
Yeah.
Okay, and now accuse the other person of a terrorist or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. And that happens. It's been
So-
happening in school.
So
You don't even have to say anything.
that's right, because we're in the age of social media and this and that, and which I'm going to get to in a minute. So now you have this whole thing blown up because of technology
Yes.
in one way.
It's very dangerous.
Now, I'm going to mention something that happened to me. It's a minuscule example, but it's a good one. Okay, I have a giant Hewlett-Packard printer that came. We just bought it, and it came with starter cartridge. And when I went to replace the starter cartridge, I first went to Staples and found out they charge $85. So I said, no, I'm not going to go there. It was $85 per cartridge, and we need 4 of them. So I went to Cartridge World. I took out all the old cartridges and brought them back to Cartridge World and got the 4 cartridges for $200. Okay, so a week went by. I got a phone call from Nova Scotia, the Staples, like a Staples headquarters. And they said to me, ma'am, they said, well, we noticed you didn't buy the replacement cartridges from us, Staples. And I smiled, I said, how did you know that? And I said to the fellow says to me, I'm going to be your account manager. I want you to come back here. And he says, well, how come you didn't buy the cartridges from us? I said, because your price was too high, for one. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, how did he know I went to another place
Right.
to get other cartridges? And so, and I told him, I said, it's really none of your business where I shop.
Right.
Because he happened to know that I went to another place. Somehow he knew that.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that on an ink cartridge, there is some sort of serial number or
Yes.
whatever that is tracked.
Yeah.
And so they went and tracked the number and saw that I didn't buy from there
Yeah.
and called me up.
Wow.
And so, now personally, I want to shop where I want to shop.
So you got a call from the printer Gestapo.
Yes, the
Okay.
printer Gestapo. It's a minuscule example, but it's
Yeah.
one that resonated in my mind.
Yeah.
Because over the years, I have shopped where I had wanted to, and now if somebody's tracking my shopping behavior, then we're being tracked. And
Yeah.
with the internet,
Yeah.
another way I want to mention you're being tracked is with the cookies. If you shop at
Yeah.
a place on the internet, then they're going to track where you shop there. So, see, shaking your head, but that's what happened.
And they want to put these things on license plates so that wherever you drive, the government will always know where that car is. And then they will know what speed you're going at. And they're putting these devices inside cars now so that if you are in an accident, it'll be like the kind of black boxes they have for aircraft, but it's in a vehicle. And you don't have any choice. This is Big Brother.
Okay, now kids, especially if you're born today, are
Right.
never going to know
Right.
what life was like without all of this stuff and being tracked.
What it was like to live in a free country.
So they're going to be automatically conditioned into think that this is the norm.
Especially the ones who go to public schools. Now, the homeschoolers may have a little bit different approach.
Right, because they're being brought up different
Yes.
in a different way. So the government can find me no matter where I am right now. They can pretty much find me.
That's very dangerous. Imagine if Hitler had had this.
We'd all be speaking German today
Wow.
because he'd be win the war, right?
And you also have to remember that the Hitlerian personality type is the personality type that will always do whatever it takes to get power Hitler, Napoleon, same personality type. They live to control others, and they will turn the place into a prison planet, like we'll all be living in one big prison. I think that's where Alex Jones got the name Prison Planet, because that is where we are headed for.
That's right. So, now, and there's another example I could point out. I recently upgraded my Apple iPhone, okay, and a few weeks ago we had a bad storm. And in the middle of the night I hear bonk, 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 the emergency signal. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And, and it was going on throughout the night. It had been the most obnoxious sound.
Yeah, I know.
And then it went off on my son's cell phone, and he picked up and he says, "Did you sign up for a weather app?" I said, "No." And then we called the company, and then they said, "This is standard now."
Yeah.
So apparently they gave my number to a weather station or somewhere. Somebody has my number, that this app was automatically installed and my number was on it. So now they're sending the emergency signals no matter what.
Well, to give you another example of how different governments share data, because of where we live here in this DC area, a percentage of the people have to have security clearances. And when you have a security clearance, they have to investigate you every so many years. Mm-hmm. And this one guy I know, he was interviewed for a friend of his who had to get his security clearance renewed. And so he said fine, he was willing to talk. And during the interview, it turned out that this federal investigator knew that he had handguns. Now in Maryland, which is a very anti-gun state, you are not allowed to own a handgun unless it is registered with the Maryland State Police. But so this federal investigator knew that this interviewee had guns. And this guy told me, he said, "What business is it of theirs whether I have a gun or whether I do not have a gun?" But the thing is, when you give your information to any government agency, federal, state, county, local, they all have it. And when you give your information to a printer company or anybody, any government agency can just walk in and buy it. They don't have to get a warrant just to go and buy it, because these companies will sell anything because they want to make money. So any information that you give them, they view as a revenue source. And one of the sources of revenue is your tax dollars. So the government takes your tax dollars and they use it to get information about you. Just like Hitler took the Germans' tax dollars and used that to put them from what had been a democratic republic, the Weimar Republic, into one of the worst tyrannies the world has ever seen. And could that happen here? I would say never say never.
I would say it's happening here.
Oh,
slowly.
Yeah.
We have a tyranny. We have a small tyranny right now.
It's growing, and both parties are in this together.
Well, the Republicans have been infiltrated too. So
everybody, it's very dangerous.
So now, if you're going to educate a college student, how would you go about doing that?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of this stuff is done at a very, very high level. You do not have to be a part of a conspiracy to know about the conspiracy. No, I didn't say that right. You can be a part of a conspiracy without knowing about it. You can be a willing dupe. And I believe a lot of college professors are willing dupes. because they're just teaching what they were taught when they were in college. And I would say if you have children, the least you can do is to be cognizant that they are going to be bombarded with all kinds of misinformation. But if they are willing to look at a diversity of information, then hopefully they will have the sense to separate the wheat from the chaff. Most people that I know who are hardcore ideologues, the reason is they only listen to one side of the story every day. If you watch MSNBC religiously and that's all you know, then that's all you know. If you watch Fox religiously, that's all you know. I think it's important to listen to a diversity of opinions, because you will learn more from people with whom you disagree than you will learn from people with whom you agree. And before you can say that you disagree with someone, you have to understand what they're saying well enough so that you could stand up and present their arguments. If you do not know what they're saying, or if you do not understand their point of view well enough to be able to deliver it yourself, then you do not understand what they're saying, and you may not be disagreeing with them in the way that you think. You may actually agree with them on some things and disagree with them on other things. So, and also when you do this, eventually you reach a point where one benefit of getting older is everyone has an internal lie meter. You have a better detection ability to know when you're being lied to, and you're better able at realizing when you are being deceived, because by that time you've been deceived enough, and you develop a sixth sense of when someone is telling you something. If it doesn't sound right, then there's something wrong there.
Well, that's just it, and we have to wake the students up to all of this that's going on, because they continue to be deceived in some way.
Yeah.
And it's like you mentioned, it's like a cycle, okay?
Yeah.
Because if this cycle, now we have the professors in college, now they're teaching the same thing, so the cycle's going around.
Yeah.
And
we were like that when I was in college back in, many years ago. One thing that I noticed, a lot of my peers, now this was back in the 70s, and we were getting all this left-wing stuff. But a number of people, when they actually got out of college and started working, and they saw how much of their paycheck was being taken by the government, and then they have to deal with these government agencies like the Motor Vehicle Administration, they would do a complete 180. They would go from left wing to right wing very quickly. And it's just a matter of being out in the world a little bit.
Okay, John, I have to stop you.
Okay.
John O'Malley, CPAC 2014. Thank you very much.